That didn't feel very zen.
Ay, ¿por qué lo estoy haciendo with my hands?
Pero hazlo otra vez. It feels zen, especially with the fire sirens. Welcome to New York.
Welcome to New York City Sound Healing. This is Crystal Sage Wisdom episode 16, and I am Alex. And for those of you who don't know, this is my sister.
I'm not drinking apple juice raw. I'm drinking cafecito brain. And my mug, that's very dirty, says, when prayers go up, blessings come down. This is episode 16. And welcome to Botanical Home Edition, part 2. This is kind of like officially the first video that we do from our home studio. Some of these elements that you see here, like the plants, like the bookshelf, like some of the books that are behind us, and
Some of our crystal buddies.
they're with us. And so this is part 2 of the days that we used to own a little crystal shop. This is the home edition, where our intention is to sort of share some insights and some tools, some lessons that we've learned along the way of being crystal shop owners, and also learning a very valuable lesson on that entrepreneurial experience. And today we wanted to chat about some of those lessons.
Mi gente, I just want to start out by saying that probably lesson number 1 to me was always be open to how things evolve or unravel, because, you know, had you ever asked my sister or I if we saw ourselves owning a shop or specifically a crystal metaphysical space, we probably would have been like,
Maybe Dad would have been excited because he was the first person that planted that seed into our mind when we were learning. It wasn't even about crystals. We were just learning about plant medicine.
yeah, it was beginning our journey. Like, honestly, before we even got to any of that as a possibility, we were on our own individual paths studying. We were studying different traditions with different teachers. We studied some things that were similar or like the same, but we also did a lot of things very separate from one another and just different. Just honestly, I personally, to speak for myself, like during those years, like I was personally feeling this curiosity, this excitement, this call to just learn, and it was calling me to learn I was being called to learn very specific things during those years, and I was allowing myself for the first time to just trust, oh, I wanna learn Reiki. Okay, I'm gonna dive in and do it. I it's like almost giving myself permission to do it, especially because a lot of these modalities or ways of being or studies that we did along the way were not things we grew up with. We were not exposed to those things. It wasn't anything that was our norm. So to get to a place where all of a sudden we were feeling a real call and interest to go down certain paths and just learn for no other reason. It didn't start out without an agenda. Like, I didn't start out thinking I'm going to do this because then I want to, work with people like this or create this. It was more like, oh my God, something about this feels very interesting to me. And I'm going to try it. That's genuinely how it started. And then one thing kept building on each other. And little by little, I started to realize that so many things I was learning was just honestly sort of almost like everything like kind of complemented each other, supporting at the end of the day, the body systems, whether it was coming from a mind, whether it was supportive of the mind, the body, or the soul. What about you during those times? Like, what do you think? What was what was it that called you or got you to the point where you were like, you know what, let me just start jumping in and just studying some of these things, some of these areas?
What a great question, Alex. I think that the ultimate epiphany point was when I was working in music television and I knew that I wanted to transition. I also saw how toxic the environment was. I mean, it was always toxic. I remember you telling me, I don't understand how you survive in those worlds. Neither did I, but I was determined to be a career woman. I was determined to make monies, and I was determined to make an impact and help to create a legacy for our last name. And some of that was achieved, but at the end, I saw that I was starting to feel fear for my health. And I was extremely worried about our father in those days because his health was really deteriorating. It was deteriorating fast. And there seemed to be always such a confusion between what he understood was happening that the doctors were conveying to him. Like there was a language barrier, there was also these cultural barriers, there was also these recommendations about what to eat and that didn't make sense to him and our world. And I knew that I needed to, because I already knew twofold that I needed to pivot from the industry because I was exhausted, and the music television is really fast paced. This is, outside what you see with the artists and also inside, it's like a mirroring. And this is why I guess it's no surprise why you see so much people who fall into addiction, because sometimes you rely on substances to get you through the that industry, the pressures, the stress, the competition. And I think also being a woman, trying to adopt the modern feminine principles that I at some point was really indoctrinated and was trying to wear, and then sort of like Mother Maya said this once, biology kicks in. And for many people, biology kicks in. For women in careers, biology kicks in at a certain point, and they realize that maybe they don't want to go as hard. They realize, they start doing the math. It was like, what does it mean if I want to compete on an executive level? What do I need to sacrifice? And I was already at a point where I was getting close to climbing that ladder and moving toward upper management, and it was less fun. It was more stressful. You had more numbers and people to manage and more decisions that weighed on your mind. And it was anything from dealing with legalities, legal issues, to your team management, to who you're hiring. And at the crux of that, even though everything looked so great on paper, there was no time for me. I didn't know what I felt like, but what I did know is that I kept missing family time, and our father was getting sick. So it's a really long answer, but I think because we're living in these days of the Great Awakening, I think many people find themselves at this time, right now, sort of contemplating this pivotal decision that I was contemplating back then. And this is also kind of why, through any of the things that the PEREZ sisters do, whether it's focus more on the inner realm or, playing outside in this 3D reality, is that we're walking the path of the middle, which means we're walking the balance. We're trying to walk with more balance, with balancing this out with this and this sort of coming to the table in the middle, and sort of like integrating and seeing what comes out through that conversation point. And what I have to say is that we probably can write 20 books with all of the lessons that we have learned, starting this journey, opening up a little shop that we were unprepared for, and where we are right now. I have no regrets. it has been a tough journey. There are many things that we've learned in this tough journey, and this is why we're doing this. This is like our part 2. So welcome. I hope that you've been enjoying the videos, and we hope that we can share more of these with you, and we want you to be and participate. So please continue to comment, share your insights, and even feel free to suggest topics that you would like us to cover.
That's a great idea.
So I know that you asked me a question, which was, what was it for you? Which was a blend of all things. I think maybe, aromatherapy, plant healing medicine, all that stuff. So my sister and I, because we're different humans and we had different journeys with crossovers, I think that this is one of the more fundamental, foundational lessons that we were embodying at the Crystal Shop as sisters and for our community. First and foremost was the respect that we have for each other.
Yeah, sisterhood, our relationship as sisters. It's like our relationship as sisters, sisterhood, and then now adding these other components, business partners, now business owners, entering the entrepreneurial world as an individual and as in partnership. Yeah, it really did bring a lot to the table. And if we're going to be 100% honest, when we jumped into this, I mean, that was the key word. We jumped in, to the point that within the people that knew us, I would say some of them were just shooketh. Some of them were even downright offended that all of a sudden they were like, what? It was almost like, how did this happen, And then, of course, those that were always like, yeah, do it, it's exciting. But at the end of the day, it was a surprising call for us. It was a little scary. It was overwhelming, but it also felt in that moment, with all we understood, with all that we were present with, it just felt like the right move. And so I too will also say that our path has been incredibly imperfect, mi gente. Like, there are some elements within our entrepreneurial path that I will say we were completely successful failures within. But I say successful because the lessons that come from that, and also the way it builds you up. Like, let me tell you, nothing builds your character up like some hardcore times like that. It's just the truth. In retrospect, looking back at things, even though we're still within our entrepreneurial path, to those beginning days, we had no idea what we were kind of getting into, But I will say, what I do love is that as we were leaping, we felt very aligned with what we were leaping into. We felt very passionate and excited about it. And we really felt almost like a bigger calling to do this. Because as I said earlier in the video, it wasn't anything that we were setting out to do. Like my path, was never included this particular component. It wasn't something I had dreamt to do, and yet there I was, studying all these things, loving it even more every single time, expanding in ways I could have never imagined that I was. And then all of a sudden, Botanical gets born.
Botanical, with the alpha love, like botanical gardens. Also, like a little homage to the spiritual shops that we grew up being afraid of going into.
And if you are from New York, you know that you grew up with botanicas that, even though in some ways they are a dying breed these days, but they were all over the place back in the day.
And all botanicas have their own little flavor, but the underlying basis of it is that they're places where you can go for some insights with people who have spiritual gifts. Now, whether or not you believe in those spiritual gifts, it's another subject for another time. We felt that it was important to honor our roots because that represents part of what we grew up with. And we would be lying fools if we said that our family wasn't visiting those places constantly, maybe on the down low, but it was happening. And when we opened up our little shop, we were called to fill it with things that we were naturally connected to, like plants. We didn't sell them, but they were the first things in there.
Yeah, they always had a place at Botanical.
Always had a place, as you can see, and sound healing things that we would, share with the community, like a little crystal bell that if someone who came in and sometimes they were so nervous that they just wanted to hit the bell and just connect with a loving, sacred sound. And that was enough sometimes for a person.
Yeah.
Sometimes we were there giving people a hug, and that was enough for a person. Sometimes someone was coming in there with a freaking painful life challenge where within 0.12 seconds, the moment they walked in, without us knowing each other, and this happens so much, mi gente, so much. And sometimes people will be like, but what are you doing? It's just a little shop. It's so tiny.
What do you
It's
do
crystals.
there all day?
What do you do there all day? We were being big sisters to all kinds of community members of all ages. And we're here to continue to be sisters in this journey, in this new path that we're taking. New old path, right? New because this is sort of like our 2.0 for Botanical, the home edition. But that makes sense. Given the state of where we are today, I understand why our business closed. I don't think we would have even been able to sustain it open. Small businesses are being
Within the last few years.
killed
now.
right now. Killed. And so we also always have such a space for small business, for people who are making it. And believe me, there were so many times that we wanted to give up. There were so many times that we wanted to close our shop because it does feel sometimes like you're climbing a mountain, holding a big bag of rocks, trying to take the next step. And on top of holding a big bag of rocks, you have human beings holding on to that heavy bag of rocks that you're trying to lift and carry forward to the top of the mountain, holding you back with their fears, their judgments of what they think you should do and what they think you're doing, without understanding not one iota what it is that you're doing. And it's been some times that since we've had those days, and we're ready to speak with more detail about why that little shop of love was so significant to us
And to so many people throughout the years.
to so many people. I mean, look, what you have to do is visit Botanical and check out our Google reviews, or visit Botanical on Facebook and check out the Facebook reviews. We had a 5.0 rating, like a 5-star rating. And the only reason that got knocked down is because people who never even been to our shop, that we never even met, you always have trolls that want to ruin something that is created with so much love and authenticity. And I have to say that was one of the things that I was unprepared for, maybe very naive about, which is a little bit different, I guess, when you are having a sort of different form of business. Being in the realm of metaphysics and spirituality opens you up like shiny candy to beings who are poisoned inside. Maybe they have spiritual gifts, maybe they think they have spiritual gifts, but there were humans that tried to come by Botanical to disrupt the peace and community that we were building. And there were times where uncomfortable moments happened. The good thing is, I would say maybe that was like a 2%
Very
maybe.
little.
It was so little. It was such a tiny percentage of humans. But that 2% is still important because it comes in different ways. It can even come as a friend who knows you, who wants to inflate their relationship closeness to you on people that are coming to your shop for you, not for them. So we found ourselves having to manage all sort of lessons simultaneously outside of just being shop owners trying to have conduct a business. We were also there being big sisters, and we were also there managing powerful boundaries, because the amount of people with good intentions that want to tell you what to do, how to do it, and why you need to do it, dime a dozen.
They came in all shapes and sizes,
Yeah, and
all ages, all economic background, all education. You can't even put anyone in it's just boundaries was a huge, what happens in a crystal shop as a crystal shop owner? Well, guess what? You're going to have to learn how to have strong boundaries, not just for yourself, your individual temple, but now the shop becomes an extension of your temple that you're responsible for, because it's our baby, it's our expression. So we are responsible for what happens within that space, what gets learned, what we allow and what we do not allow. And let me tell you, we always would equate botanical as our personal little apprenticeship, because you will go through the good, the bad, and the ugly. And
rapid lessons for sure
all
sometimes.
the time, and we weren't always great at setting those boundaries. Like, sometimes
We were terrible at setting those boundaries, especially in the beginning. Let's tell the truth.
We were fracaso, like, and there were just certain things that, excuse me, you were never going to learn to set until you even understood what it was, there were just certain situations or relationships or dynamics that were happening that you didn't even really see as a breach in boundary. So we were constantly, as much as we were in a position of teaching and supporting people that walked in, we were constant students ourselves, and it was not always easy to learn those lessons and boundaries, whether we were helping people understand what boundaries are and helping them figure it out within their life, was also a huge lesson that was always constantly coming back at us. So I would definitely say that is a huge thing that I personally wasn't necessarily expecting or prepared for when we think about opening a crystal shop and what goes on in there. What goes on in there, that's a major thing that's always happening.
Oh, yeah, because you know what it is, and I've been guilty on the other side too. When you go into spaces like that, they're not all, but a lot of spiritual metaphysical shops have this different vibe that you can feel right away. And that was kind of what opened me up. And I remember our dad had just passed away, and I was just sort of like in this space that I was longing for a connection. I was longing for answers. I was longing to heal. I was carrying so much grief, and I didn't feel like I can speak to anyone in my everyday circle, or even my circle of trust. So I kept going to metaphysical shops, but I wasn't going for crystals, maybe incense, maybe to buy a little book, and that was it. And what was funny is that I would have tantrums when I would see people huddled around, dominating the space of the human that I need to talk to hurry up and check me out. I need to go. And who was always holding up the folks? People asking questions about crystals. And I'm like, having a New York tantrum, like, what the heck is, these are just fucking rocks. Read the description, pick one and go. Read the description, pick one and go. Puñeta. And then cut to, all these years later, the irony, right? It's just the irony where you persist. And I was always resisting the crystals that kept trying to be like, hey, what's going on? We could be like in your life. And I was like, no, this is so weird.
We need to help ground you. Right?
But then after having all these experiences during that grief period before we opened our shop, that I kept going to metaphysical stores, I realized quickly that I was also feeling the most open to chat. And I remember one time a lady asked me a question. I remember she worked at Stick, Stone, and Bone, which is still one of our favorites, even though it's changed a little bit. And she asked me a question, and I started pouring out right away. And with that pouring out onto a complete stranger in a metaphysical shop, I also started to feel like I reached a layer of maybe I unpeeled just a tiny bit of healing. Because I was actually witnessed by someone who was genuinely concerned and compassionate and open to hear my question. And you could say, but don't you have loved ones in your life that could have been the same? Here's the thing, which kind of separates humans, and shout out to all of you who can hold this space. Most people do not know how to hold the space, activate, or talk to anyone about grief. It's such an awkward conversation.
And that's intense, yeah.
It's intense. It's so easy to she starts talking about something and I'll cut her off. And I remember when I lost such and such. But it's not about you right now. It's about what she's saying, what was trying to come out of her expression, what the soul is recognizing. There's another soul in front of you who might be able to understand and connect to the pain that you are reaching to pour out of you. And this is sort of me saying on the other side, what we were holding space for time and time and time and time again, with love, with no regrets, at Botanical. Because there is, and we recognize that there are a lot of human beings that do not have someone that can actually just hold it.
Yeah.
And we're not perfect at it. As we're saying,
everybody's learning.
This is still something we were learning, but that we at least understood through our sister relationship that people are different, that it doesn't benefit relationships when one person is trying to manipulate and dictate how the other one moves, dresses, speaks. Don't we find ourselves in that landscape today? What decisions you make, whether or not you wear a braid. Oh, I'm triggered. Everybody's triggered about something. Can you imagine if we were sensitive like that with each other? None of what we have shared with you, from Botanical to our events to Cafecito Break, could have materialized, because familia, the first lesson we needed to learn, besides being comfortable in our own skin and that self journey, was how to relate to another. And there's a lot of broken relationships. There's a lot of siblings that cannot even be in the same space together.
sadly, right?
Yeah.
You know, I want to add that another major reason why that really motivated us to want to have botanical, just to expand a little bit on what you were saying. um, yes, we all need, or we look for at times, someone that can really hear you out without biases. And honestly, I just find that there are times that even when you're blessed with great people in your life that can do that for you, I just have seen and have found that there are times that there is nothing better than to open up to someone who's sort of outside of your life, because there is zero connection to
Yeah.
your life emotionally. And you almost feel like a sense of freedom in a way that you don't necessarily always have with the people in your life. Maybe not with every topic, maybe not with every situation, but there are times, like I think that if you all think, there's probably been moments where maybe you overshared with a stranger or a doctor or in a random situation that you're like, what the heck did I say, right? So it's like it becomes important, like when people go out to these environments like crystal metaphysical spaces, to open up and to be seen, or to feel like they could be seen. A lot of it is this feeling of, I feel a little freer to just be here with this person I really don't know but kind of know, but I feel seen, I feel grounded, I feel held, I feel like this person can not just hear but help maybe support my steps. And when my sister and I were pre-botanical being physically open, when my sister and I were in our own individual journeys, you know, we were still very blessed to kind of sort of have each other to maybe throw things at each other, or to not look at each other necessarily like we had done lost our minds with the many ways we were changing. But we were also seeing that there were so many people going through these really huge awakening moments, meaning they're changing, they're transforming, they are sifting through what they are not and really trying to figure out who they are. And during those transitions in your life, it's such a, it can be overwhelming, it can be so lonely. And sometimes it can be so lonely because literally you may not have many people in terms of your circle, and even when you have people, sometimes they don't understand what you're going through, and it's hard for them to support you because they don't understand it, and again, making you feel lonely.
Yeah.
So we were witnessing that happening with people and realizing, wow, wouldn't it be really fantastic to be able to help hold that space for folks that are really at the cusp, at the beginning? Because let's face it, whenever we're at the beginning of anything, I personally find a lot of times it tends to be one of the hardest steps, because it's a jump off point, right? The jump off point is always freaking hard. You're gonna jump off that cliff, you're gonna jump off that plane to parachute, if you're gonna be thrown off the cliff into the water, like that jump off point, taking that first step into the unknown, can be pretty freaking scary for most people.
And exciting for some.
Exactly. But nevertheless, you want people to share it with you, to be in that community with you. You do need the village. And even though when we are going through transformational moments in our life, it really is ultimately an inner journey. However, there is an important place for the village. And that's definitely another major lesson that we saw, we were able to support within our shop Botanical, but also learned in deeper ways how important it really is to truly have a village to support people during their moments. But it was interesting because we had to really sort of redefine how a village should support someone. For example, you know, if you're studying with a teacher, or if you're being of support to someone, you know, trying not to toe the line where you're doing it for the person.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
It was a big lesson for us.
It was a big lesson, right? We had to also, you know, learning, is this person really ready to do the work?
Oh,
Do
yeah.
they really want to do this, or is
Or
it
is
more,
it just a phase?
right? And again, it's like, as like a teacher or person of support in some capacity, there's a lot of lessons that come with, okay, well, what is the best way that the village can be there for a human during these transformational moments? And it wasn't always easy, you know. Again, it's like learning to set boundaries, learning to recognize when someone is ready and when they're not. Also, um, understanding really heavily that, you know, as much as you can, you may be a well of information, but um, not everybody's going to resonate with your information and how you've learned stuff and how even you express it. You know, like for example, at Botanical, there were people that, you know, I would say most people really love to be with either of us, but there was always people that would maybe align to the way my sister would say something more, or align to the way I would say something more. Not because they felt a preference or they felt, you know, like I don't like one or the other. It was like you got to find who and what you resonate to. And when you're being of support to someone, you have to remember that, um, you know, again, making sure that you're being conscious that you are not trying to tell someone how to be or what to do, which we tend to see also with a lot within the crystal metaphysical worlds. Versus I'm holding space for you, I'm going to help guide you, I will show you and teach you perspectives, I will show you and teach you techniques, but you will be the one driving this car, your car, meaning aka you're going to be, you know, integrating what you really feel called to, what really genuinely resonates, and you will be doing the work for you, not for me, you know. So there's a lot that comes with it, right? When you are working with people, when you're being the village for someone. And yes, like my sister said, we were being big sisters to so many people from so many different angles. And you know, it was like tricky waters sometimes, right? Holding, learning to hold space for people appropriately and respectfully, you know.
Yeah, tricky waters. Also, something that would happen is that people would put us in assumption boxes, which still happens to this day. But I think we've gotten better because we've broken up through a lot of boxes and we irritate human beings. Like, oh, they don't fit in that box either.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to put us in all sorts of boxes.
Oh, from the beginning.
From the very beginning, in the Reiki, or just crystals, or just be over here, or be over there, or be over here.
You're too young.
We
And
felt,
cute, you're
for
over
the
there.
most part, I guess, connected to just basics of just a natural connection to the elements. And even though we didn't adopt a specific like lineage or culture, it definitely resembles more of indigenous shamanic. And this is why we call ourselves like urban medicine women. And sometimes, depending on the circle that you're in, that term triggers people, or urban shamans, which means that we're boots on the ground in our urban environment.
It's our jungle.
And
City.
we, meaning boots on the ground, meaning that we understand it energetically. We understand the pulse of our neighborhood, of her people, of the winds of the lands. We could tune in, we could perceive, we could feel, we can communicate that to you, whether you believe it or not. And I know for me, it took a long time, even maybe up to this moment, to even communicate that effectively. But there were also things that we knew because we studied with different teachers, that there was something about like the new agey, new agey, which is full of old and new principles, right? That they were more focused on showing you and telling you, and sometimes, while the beingness came up short. So we met a lot of people who dressed the part, looked the part, spoke the part.
May have even sounded the part, but were they the part?
And did they feel the part? That wasn't for us to judge per se, right? But it's things that you see, patterns that you see. And we started to also notice, disclaimer, ladies, this is not a judgment, but we started to see women utilizing these tools that feel so good. Like, right, when you open those doorways to being more intuitive, to when you open the doorways where you're working with spiritual tools, something my sister said earlier is the whole path is harm none. And we met several women of all ages that scared the bejesus out of us. I don't mean like we were literally afraid of them, but just in the sense of very intense energy that was repelling people away from them instead of bringing people to them. And sometimes those dynamics would play out in front of them if they were with people in the space. And it comes from, and the thing is that because we're all learning on this journey, it could just come from, hey, I'm learning, you don't know yet about crystals. Let me tell you, oh, wait, no, you don't need this one, you need that one. Are you being a teacher, or are you maybe
telling someone what to do?
Right. So we saw that often, and then that was sort of mirrored by young men or men of all ages that would come in and share with us that they were interested in connecting with women who were trying to walk a holistic path, but were very turned off by manipulation tactics, by sometimes people or women were using or trying to work with spells to work something to their advantage, or sometimes they straight up look very witchy in the face. It's just not things that draw people to you. And it became such a cliche, and it has become such a cliche that to the present moment, a lot of men have been put off by new agey women because everything has just gone extreme. You don't really have, not in our neighborhood, the old school kind of yogi places. You have the new trendy yoga studios with very visually beautiful women, but is it, and you see them very well, you could tell that they're into their yoga, but that yoke element where you're connecting with something bigger, that source, has that left a lot of those places. It seems like it has. Like New York is not the same the way it used to be with all of the metaphysical stores and the old school feeling yoga. There's been sort of like a marketable trendiness that has sort of overtaken what used to be the old school medicine woman, shamanic, to the trendy one.
And also places and tools that just were approached with more respect. With curiosity and more natural boundaries, more mystery.
Mystery is a big one.
And I feel like the commercialization of so many of these areas really did water down a lot of its medicine, and in the way that it was being expressed, and the way that people and what people were focusing on. And it just feels like it became a lot more aesthetic and almost fake, and
TikTok-y.
a lot of misinformation. I mean, TikTok to me was a key. I feel like it was incredibly damaging in how many people were decimating information within these areas, and so much of it was so misconstrued, or just made or too oversimplified. And my sister
or too dramatic.
And my sister and I, we focused within our space with Botanical. We did our best to keep it sort of universal, because when people came into our space, when we were connecting with people within our space, we wanted to focus more on what connects us more than what doesn't. And so we were always very conscious of the words we were using, how we were approaching folks, how we wanted our space to represent itself as a brick and mortar, right? And and that was, you know, very central to us in some ways. You know, it always sort of put us in a middle path, right? We were never quite one thing, which I know sometimes that can be misleading. But what one of the reasons why that was so big for us is because also we're seeing the way, you know, a lot of these beautiful sacred medicines from any angle was just almost being taken for granted and
And being
commercialized in a way.
perverted.
Yeah, it was very disrespectful, honestly, and it was very scary. For example, to see little girls, little young kids, come into the space and talk to me about making spells.
Ooh.
As an example, you know, that can be other stories for another day in terms of going into those details. But um, my sister and I were we had some really hard boundaries.
That
with
was a
certain
big boundaries.
things. Yeah, like
Did
you
you
know,
want to learn about a spell? See
that
your way to another
that
shop.
was not us. Like when we say we really kept in the middle, we really mean, I want to know, I want to work with you on how to help support you build strong, have self-care practices and build stronger, healthier self-care practices, you know, which can be looked at from any angle, can be so many different components. It can be as simple as, hey, do you have plants in your house?
Yeah. As you see, we love plants.
That's it. Or it can be as deep as, okay, maybe we got to start doing, maybe we got to have more dialogue. Maybe we have to start opening up on about maybe certain traumas or things that you're holding on to.
Maybe
right?
you are seeing angel numbers.
Right. Maybe you do have gifts, genuine gifts that are developing. You know, maybe in your home you're feeling spiritual energy. Like there were so many different capacities, but so many different examples because everyone came in with something different. But we always did our best to be supportive, but there were just certain things that we never went down the path. And when it came to messing around with things like, you know, spells, and we were never about that life ever at all, ever in our whole time at Botanical. If anything,
And
we were always very careful. Even when people would walk into our space and use certain words, sometimes I'd be like,
yeah,
don't even,
be
not
mindful.
here, because at the end of the day, every time we're speaking, we are spelling. You know, we are. It's like if you
That's
don't like
what I
that
wanted
word,
to say.
if
She
you don't,
stole that
I
message
took
out
it
from
your
my brain.
mind. If you don't like the word spelling, then just focus on like your intentions. Like,
Yeah.
you know, from a scientific perspective, like how many times has it already been proven what your mind believes your body does?
But here the thing is that, right, while we had that strong boundary, we were also ultimately there to witness our siblings and to hold them in a space of non-judgment. So we weren't going to make you feel bad if this was the language and intention you came in the shop with, because that's sometimes what would happen. And what we would do is just we would redirect the question. Mamita, why are you interested in working with a spell? Because you're angry at someone, because someone broke your heart. Can we, are you open to sort of like hearing some other insights? Because that's the other thing that we saw many people fail miserably at, is they never ask if it's okay to share. I'm perceiving something, is it okay if I share? I'm seeing something, is it okay if I share? I'm intuiting something, is it okay if I share? Hey, I had a dream with you. Is it okay if I share what I dreamt about? But either because of good intentions, anxiety, and many times ego, no, I got it, I have to share with you right now.
And also because that's the way it was being commercialized. It was the cool thing to do.
And mind you, this has been a discussion point even with people who consider themselves master teachers. This is not a point everybody agrees with. This is something,
excuse me,
that's strong with us.
Yeah, but if you sit down with other people, they can tell you a total opposite, which is why, again, we would always say to people, you got to find the people that speak your language.
And why did we say that, right? Like, why was that a strong boundary for us in that way? Is because you don't know how something that comes out of your mouth is going to be received by the other person. There were things that people said to me throughout the years in the way they said it to me that literally gave me trauma because I was unprepared to deal with it.
Also, I consider it an invasion of privacy. You know, if I'm not inviting you, or if I haven't opened myself personally to you, I don't really invite someone's it's been very selective people throughout my life, very specific situations where I have felt comfortable to say, okay, yeah, and been open to receive what they're sharing with me. And even when they're sharing something with me, you take it as a person, as maybe a warning, or hey, focus as a little message, like, hey, maybe you got to focus over here, or you still got to sort of integrate and find out maybe what the overall messaging is, but not necessarily always a literal.
Sometimes something could be literal and sometimes it cannot. Look, we had one of our sister friends had a dream that I don't think she'll mind if I share a little bit with, because it has to do with us and our work. And they know that we're very active in our activism and our content creating. And it was a little warning, hey, I saw you out on the street and you were covering a protest and there was some activity and violence broke out and there was a drone overhead spying on you guys. Be careful. Now, this person lives out of state and this person is not in our day-to-day knowings of what we're doing. But we trust this person because that person's in our circle of trust. And we know this person is a skilled dreamer. So there's things that you need to know about like that are helpful.
But I think...
Hold on. And then with all that, then I have to make an assessment.
That's the right word. You
right.
gotta assess it.
I have to assess.
You can't just
that doesn't mean
per...
because she's a skilled dreamer, which is what I'm trying to say. You see how we have different communication styles? A skilled dreamer. That doesn't mean that her dream is to be taken literal. And we see these things happen all of the time. And when we were at Botanical, because my sister is a very skilled dreamer, and she's predicted things many times in our lives.
When we are talking about dreams or when people are sharing it with me, I will always say trust what you feel your inner guidance is telling you it truly means. I can give you, if you're asking me, I can give you what I feel it's saying or when maybe what I'm perceiving from my perspective.
Or symbols that you might sort of intuit because of your experience.
It's usually symbols. Usually our dreams are communicating messages through symbols, but at the end of the day, nothing should ever topple the way your inner guidance is sort of feeling the message really means, because let's say if I have a dream, I tell my sister, this is going to happen. I may be perceiving it totally different than when I say it to her. She may get a whole other, feeling about it. And that's what she needs to focus on, the feeling she gets, And so, the proper word, like you were saying, is assessment. Whenever you are opening yourself to someone, it doesn't, of trust, hopefully, and you're receiving some sort of information, you got to receive it and assess it within your body to see if it genuinely feels right for you. And I feel like, again, this is why at Botanical, we were always reminding people, like, you're the driver of your car. Right? Because we have gotten so comfortable with allowing outside things or people always kind of influence what we're really feeling, or even if you're intuitively feeling something, it's sort of, you'll start to second guess yourself the moment somebody's like, no, do this, or no, really, no, you're wrong.
Because some of that wisdom be coming out like that, like,
right, like a smack.
Like a smack, and you're like, yo, I'm just literally just trying to cross the street, and that's it. And you just came and you spanked my ass and you pushed me and I'm already on the sidewalk. I tripped on a pebble and I wasn't even ready to get there that fast.
Como una garnata.
But you smacked me pretty much almost into the ground with your words. And that's another thing, mi gente. Like, I know sticks and stones may break my bones and words may never hurt me.
It's the biggest lie. Biggest lie ever.
And sometimes you don't have to say a word at all. And these are other lessons. We have so many lessons that we learned at Botanical that just sitting, being, communicates volumes. And
so
here's,
true.
as we wrap down, something that is one of the most ultimate lessons. Don't make assumptions. Sometimes you will know, and then sometimes you won't know. And sometimes someone that you meet that carries themselves a certain way might know more than you realize. And what we've realized is that some of the people that are like so incredibly tapped in, tuned in, and insightful are usually the ones that will say the least, are usually the ones that will not tell you what their specific skill set is. They never do.
They never boast.
They never boast
Ever.
at all. They don't tell you, oh, I'm so like how many times was that a comment? Oh, well, I'm empathic and I've got this and I'm clairvoyant and I blah 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 blah.
You get the whole resume.
Well, good for you. And so if someone's looking out there, who am I gonna take down next that has these developed powers? You just made it so easy for humans to find you that may not want. Not that we're projecting fear into the space, but this is a reality.
It's real talk.
There's a
Real
reason
talk.
why this falls under the occult. That doesn't necessarily always means ritual and hiding something bad. It just means this is part of the mystery path. Your heart opens the door. Now, how are you going to walk this journey and with what intentions? Just like a crystal, this is selenite, one of my favorite crystals. Some people think that this is a tool of the devil. Some people have been harmed by crystals because people have used crystals and spell work to try to harm other human beings. What we're saying here is this is neutral. This is a piece of earth created by God.
Literally minerals.
That's it. And when you hold this piece of earth, because our skin and this has a lot of similar components, sometimes just holding this, seeing the shimmer, you might feel a lightness. You might feel more grounded. You might get an inspired thought, but not because anybody is using this and venerating it, but using this understanding that God also made this just as he made Alex, you, me, and all of the tools that we get to work with. And yeah.
And I would say, as we're wrapping up that despite the fact that my sister and I have worked with people from within different environments, the one thing that we really, the botanical years really took it home, the one lesson, I went in already feeling it, but it really took it home, that lesson, and then has gotten deeper and deeper, and that's the reminder that the most important and most powerful thing that you can do for yourself is get to know yourself. Get
Amen.
to build your intuition and your senses, because you can go anywhere, do anything, and the one thing that you're going to always need is to have a developed inner sense, inner guidance, because especially in the world that we live in, there's a lot of trickery. And trickery comes in all forms, not just with things we see. It could be things we hear, things we smell, things we feel, right? And what can really be supportive during any moment throughout your whole life is how connected are you to yourself? How well do you know who you are? Mind, body, soul. Have you really built up your intuition? Do you understand that voice? Can you decipher that voice? And I have seen that just kind of hone in for me be probably one of the most important things anyone can ever do in this life is, you know, a lot of our answers are never outside, they will always be within, you know. So do not be afraid to start that journey, to dive into yourself. And it doesn't matter what age you are, mi gente. Don't think that because maybe you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, que it's too late, you know, or if you're a little on the younger side that you can't start. No. Any age, at any time, you can set the intention to begin to build a relationship with yourself, because at the end of the day, if you want to have a strong, powerful relationship with anything or anyone else, a partner, your job, friends, family, it has to begin with you primero.
It starts with you, community members. And thank you for joining us again for another Crystal Sage Wisdom, episode 16.
And before we go, I just want you to see my little fin. See?
I thought you were showing something else. I was getting a little concerned.
It's my little fin that I'm showing all the Pisces out there. It's the reason why I like this shirt. It spoke to my fish sense.
I have no words for that. Sometimes she just leaves me speechless.
Happens sometimes.
It does. We love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. Please like, share, subscribe. It helps people find our page. And if you want to visit our Boots on the Ground content, Cafecito Break, subscribe there too. And if you want to make a contribution or maybe inquire to chatting with one of us about, you know, having one of those one-on-one awakening sister chit-chats, we have time in our schedule. We'll make time in our schedule for a few people. Times are busy, community members. So, but we want to be supportive to our community. So, you know, information below.
Mi gente, links down below.
Links down below.
Have a fantastic, blessed week. Keep hydrated, stay grounded, and we will see you all in a few days.
Toodles.
Ciao.